even just keeping your blood sugar stable can make you less anxious by this afternoon. So a lot of us, when we're having a blood sugar crash, it induces a stress response in the body, puts us immediately into a state of anxiety or even panic.
What are the 3 things we can do for our anxiety right now?
Like if you wanted to be less anxious by tomorrow, 3 things. I struggle to narrow it down to 3, but let's say this. Even just keeping your blood sugar stable can make you less anxious by this afternoon. So a lot of us, when we're having a blood sugar crash, it induces a stress response in the body, puts us immediately into a state of anxiety or even panic. And so keeping our blood sugar stable, which you can approach the definitive way of eating a blood sugar stabilizing diet, avoiding refined carbohydrates and sugar. If that's too hard, a spoonful of almond butter, a spoonful of coconut oil, something like that can give you a nice safety net of blood sugar. It'll blunt a blood sugar crash and you'll avoid an unnecessary stress response. Getting the phone out of the bedroom is a really nice intervention. People who haven't done it yet, they're like, I don't know if I could do that. And I saw the look in your face, like anyone who has already done that, they're like, yeah. How did I wait so long? Makes a big difference for so many reasons. Not suppressing our melatonin, not keeping us, endlessly scrolling on the attention economy that has no stopping point, not doom scrolling and bathing ourselves in fear messaging right before bed. And then a little bit of magnesium glycinate goes a long way for anxiety. And if I can sneak in like extra credit ones,
bonus,
I would say get outside into sunshine, fresh air, nature if you have access to it, and just move your body in whatever way feels good.
I love those recommendations because what I'm hearing are really accessible, fairly cheap, right? Magnesium isn't the most expensive supplement out there. And something that we can do routinely as long as we start getting into the habit. And it's wild for us how disequalized we are every single day with all of these things, right? It's like, and we don't know. Whoever taught us in high school how to balance our blood sugar through diet? And so many people are like, I don't know, I just feel really weird after I eat like this, So these type of things, I'm so glad that you're teaching us. But talking about blood sugar, what are some of the foods that are really dysregulating us?
I mean, I think your audience at this point has its PhD in this, but in case it's helpful to review.
For sure.
I mean, we can get really in the weeds or you can step back. And I think a really useful, simple compass is generally err on the side of eating real food. Real food, it grew in the ground or it was part of a healthy animal. And generally err on the side of avoiding fake food, which is basically processed food. And I think the real, we start cooking with gas when we start to examine the ways that it's so hard to do that in our modern food environment that trying to do that becomes its own source of anxiety. So if we all lived on Whole30 Island and everything was cooked out of Max Lucavere's cookbook, right? Then there'd be no need for drama or delicate balance or any of that. We would just eat real food and it'd be no big deal. If the soil was healthy, if the agribusiness of our country was sort of a love project rather than a really soulless, morally corrupt industry, it would be easy. But instead, we're navigating this food landscape that makes it incredibly difficult to eat real food. And then we need to start looking into how do we do this from a place of ease, where we still connect to pleasure, where we still say yes to social engagements, where we don't do this from a place of self-negation or self-punishment, self-loathing. We don't do it to be perfect. It's not rolling over to toxic diet culture. It's an act of radical self-love every time. And I think that's really hard to balance. But the real answer to your question is, I don't know, you got to eat a balance. It's a little bit of well-sourced meat, a little bit of starchy tubers, and a bunch of vegetables with liberal amounts of healthy fat throughout. Throw in some bone broth and fermented foods, and you've got a pretty good diet.
Yeah, and that works so much for so many people. But so many of us are eating really fast, on the go, processed food, stopping by the corner store, and on the road and eating this bar, saying that protein bar, right? But it's got tons of sugar and tons of preservatives. And I don't blame people for their blood sugar going up and down because of, one, the lack of education that we were taught and the accessibility of all this food that is seemingly healthy,
And marketed as healthy.
Which,
I mean, if anything is marketed as anything, like you pretty much know it's a processed food.
Right,
Because like big avocado isn't here telling us like this is healthy.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe
we sort of intuitively know that oh, this came from the ground. It's probably going to be healthy, right?
Yeah.
I love that you said that because the marketing is the genius behind what really has put us into a state of like eating all this food and being confused all the time about it. Hey everyone, I want to talk about Birch Living. This is a partner I've been working with for quite a while. And you know that sleep is super important for me. It is a pillar for health. And I'm always excited to talk about Birch on my show. It's a premium mattress in the box company that makes mattresses and sleep products that are stylish, comfortable, and environmentally conscious. They're organic, non-toxic mattresses, are made right here in the United States. Now, it was important for me to choose a mattress like Birch that's made with organic and natural materials because I sleep comfortably knowing I'm avoiding any harmful off-gassing from the manufacturing process. And Birch mattress is also Green Guard Gold certified. That is the highest standard to make sure that sensitive people like children, the elderly, and everyone else is being protected from these off-gassing chemicals. I've had Birch mattress for about 8 months now, and I love it. What I love most is its breathability. Keeps me cool at night. I'm not waking up sweating for sure. How it's supporting and relieving pressure points, like I'm being held by a cloud. It's allergen and mildew resistant. You know I suffer with mold, so this is a big one for me. And it's made of raw materials sourced straight from nature. So with Birch mattress, you're gonna get a 100-night sleep trial along with 25-year warranty. If it makes you nervous to buy something and you haven't tried it yet, you're gonna get 3 months to make sure that you love it. And if you don't, they're gonna come pick it up for you. You're gonna get a full refund. And the best part of this is that Birch delivers a mattress right to your door for free within the United States. Comes rolled up in a box and super easy to set up yourself. Now, I love my Birch mattress. I think you will too. If you're looking for a new bed, check out Birch. You can click the link or go to birchliving.com/healthyself and get $400 off of your mattress plus 2 free pillows. Thank you, Birch. Do you know that 75 to 90% of all doctor visits are stress-related? Many of us are operating in survival mode, and we know it. Expecting our skin, our bodies, and our minds to thrive when we're running on empty. So to change this reality, we love this new purpose-led California-based hemp CBD brand, Prima. I've been talking about it for so long. I've had the founder, Jess, on here talking about the integrity of the company. They're dedicated to helping you rise above modern-day stress so every day is a little bit better. With their doctor-formulated, clinically validated, high-performance products for the skin, body, and mind. If you're not sure where to start, try Prima's The Daily CBD Capsule to help you relieve stress. Or, if you're in need for a restful night's sleep without waking up groggy the next morning, Sleep Tight will really help you get into a restorative deep sleep. So lucky for us, Prima is offering all Heal Thyself listeners an exclusive, limited time, 20% off offer with the code Heal Thyself. Go to Prima.co with the code Heal Thyself to get 20% off and get the relief you deserve so you can feel better every single day. Thank you, Prima.
And this challenge of doing this in a convenient way, like I live this challenge and I haven't fully hacked it, but I think it's important to embrace batch cooking, meal delivery services, and glass Tupperware. And embrace like having a backpack with you where you carry along your food when needed, but also to not be so obsessive or so fixated or afraid of occasionally loosening the reins. But basically what I do is we batch cook, usually on Sunday, make a large volume of food, pack that up into Pyrex glass Tupperwares, put that in the fridge, and then when you're ready for lunch, when you're going to be out of the house, you just grab one of those and you eat that. And it's your real food with a nice balance of, it has your red meat, it has your starchy tuber, it has your vegetables, and you bring it with you. And then when you're in a situation where you can't eat that way, you're having dinner out with friends at a Mexican restaurant, that's when you remind yourself, my body's not that fragile, and eating with the right attitude and enjoying in the ease and the pleasure of breaking bread with friends is also a health practice. So we need to be able to kind of have an 80-20 about it.
I love that you said 80-20 because A lot of us become inundated with, okay, here's the information to eat healthy. Here's how I'm going to put it into practice. And then it becomes a compulsion.
Yeah.
Where there's no room. And I was guilty of it in school. I was like, there's no way I'm going to even touch that, you know? And I was crazy. I was writing down my sodium and sugar and fat and carbohydrates. And I was tracking and tracking and tracking. My God, the amount of stress that put on me was probably more unhealthy than not going to, the corner spot at college and eating like a fat sandwich with, fries in it at some point, you know? Just the relief of, like you said, breaking bread with friends. So we have to put that into perspective for a lot of people, right?
Orthorexia is a big problem. And it weighs heavily on me that I feel like I've been responsible for tipping some people over from, they were really inflamed, they were undernourished, and they were feeling anxious or depressed. So I opened their eyes to, hey, what you eat matters. And I said, here's a better way to eat and all that. And I thought I was helping, but I actually sent people down a path of, oh God, I didn't realize this. And industrially processed seed oils, oh my God, it's in everything. Mm-hmm. And then they become fixated and obsessive and orthorexic. That's not helping anybody's anxiety, because then you're saying no to social engagements. You're missing out on opportunity for connection, a far better salve for anxiety than any amount of anti-inflammatory eating.
Right.
And then you're fearing food and feeling fragile. And that just further tells our body that we're unsafe, and it puts us in a fear response. Mm-hmm. And I think that there's this tension between orthorexia, doing everything perfectly, and running the other way to a kind of one version of body positivity where it's, as my friend Elise put it, eating like a teenager, which we think we're kind of flipping the bird to toxic diet culture, but then we run right into the pockets of the processed food industry. And they're designing and engineering food to be addictive.
Yeah.
And we think we're sovereign and we think we're doing something for self-love and treating ourselves, but then we still don't feel well. Yeah. And so we really need to strike that balance where we're not really rolling over to toxic diet culture or to the processed food industry that's like, bet you can't eat just one. It's the joke is on us. We literally can't because it's engineered to be addictive.
Yeah.
And I think that looking one layer beneath orthorexia, we wouldn't have this problem at all were it not for the fact that so much of our food has been engineered to be addictive. Mm-hmm. And so it's like if our food just was real food and it wasn't hyper palatable, we weren't getting addicted, I don't think any of us would have that moment of, oh crap, I need to eat completely differently than how I've been eating.
Oh, yeah.
We wouldn't have gotten sick in the first place from how we're eating. So I just think there's just no blame here on anyone at whatever phase of this journey they're on. I think there is blame. It's on the food industry. But I think that we get into this for very understandable reasons.
Mm-hmm. Of course. And we can't not. It's a giant trap that we are bound to at some point all fall into.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's design. There's scientists that make sure that it's hyperpalatable, that we go, whoa, I want another chip. Why was this so good?
Yeah.
And it's like, blueberries don't taste this good, you know what I mean? God, this, packaged blueberries, way better. But so important to find that space where you feel freedom, you feel autonomous. You go, no, I'm in charge of my food. And guess what? I'm going to go to this Mexican restaurant. We're going to have a good meal, me and my friends.
Yeah.
You find that balance, man, you're already doing everything you need from the nutrition standpoint and the anxiety of human connection. We need to connect more.
Yes.
Right? That is so huge. How big of a role is the community playing over the years as you learn more about this? How important is it?
I do everything through an ancestral lens. This isn't here's what's morally superior. It's really understanding how we are wired through our DNA. And on the proverbial savanna of evolution, we were never the strongest species. We were not the fastest species. We were the ones who cleverly figured out how to cooperate and to prevail through cooperation. And for that reason, it's in our hard wiring that when we feel held in community, part of the tribe, we feel safe. And if we feel like we're on the outs, if we've been ostracized, if we've been shunned, if we're left out, if we're not liked, it feels life or death on some part of our DNA. It really feels like survival is at stake. It hurts. And I think that here we are in modern life where we're siphoned off into SUVs and McMansions and social media bubbles and echo chambers. And so much of social media, it sometimes helps us connect, right? Like, I wouldn't know of your existence were it not for Instagram. And that, I don't cavalierly move past that. It's meaningful. But every time we're scrolling, it is a little bit of an opportunity cost for being in person with somebody. And we know that the gestalt of connecting with people in person, it gives us more than that kind of artificial sweetener connection to Instagram. We have a shared experience. There's some kind of energy exchange that helps meet fundamental human needs. So I think we were already in an epidemic of loneliness even before the pandemic. And then we were taught to fear people outside of our household, taught to think they're a risk to us, we're a threat to them, and just became even more connected to our screens and socially distancing. And here we are, and there's been skyrocketing rates of depression and anxiety. And I think that those two things are connected.
One of the things that blew me away was learning how biologically important community is to even parameters when you look at our blood work and how important it is from inflammation and even addiction to smoking, right? Like, even if you're a smoker, you also have to ask your patient, do you have good community? Right? Like, I was like, wait, what do you mean? Like, I thought like that was the parameter first, or I thought this was parameter. When I started learning about that, I go community, and it hit this part where I was like, oh my God, we're so socially isolated. This was before the pandemic too. And then the pandemic happened, and it's exactly what you said. It's like, we're taught to be scared of each other. You're taught to say that you're a burden to someone else if you have a little cough or something, right? That might not even be COVID. And this unfolds, and now you're seeing a boom of, like you said, anxiety and depression. Where do we go then from here? How do we reestablish community in a modern world where we have, like you said, McMansions, or we're in SUVs? How do we start establishing community? Because a lot of people, they'll hear community shows or people talk about how I'm in the middle of Kansas right now. How do I find people who I can connect with? Where do we start?
Okay, so I have a little bit of a field of dreams approach to this. Like, we have to go first, and it's a little bit like, if you build it, they will come. Think about how you like to connect with people. Some people like a big group. Some people are super introverted and really don't like that, and doesn't feel good to their nervous system. So you figure out, what's the social context that lights me up and feels good, and then you put it out there. And you throw it out there to people, and some people will say no, and that'll feel like a little bit of a rejection. But it ends up acting as a filter, because the people who will say yes, you have something in common with, and you have a shared value and a shared way of enjoying company. And then I'm a big proponent of lowering our standards for how we host. So for example, I'm in LA right now, right? Staying in an Airbnb. And it's a mess, and it's not that nice. And I'm gonna host people for dinner.
Great.
And so I'm not cooking, and I'm gonna order takeout, and we're gonna sit around in this messy, dingy Airbnb, and we're gonna eat food together and just connect and have a good conversation. And I do this all the time in New York. It's like, the house is a mess, I'm a mess, we didn't have time to cook, put all that aside, have no pressure on ourselves to do this properly, because the goal here is not to impress anybody. It's, I don't have as this love language, I've made you a 6-course meal. It's basically just the goal is connection. And I think that there's a lot to be said for how we can be disarming, because I think a lot of us are socially awkward. And a lot of us have social anxiety, and if we didn't before, we do now, because we feel rusty at social interaction. And so much of how we feel uncomfortable around each other is when we're uncomfortable, we exude that, and then it makes other people uncomfortable, and it just becomes this spiral.
Oh my God, I've been there before.
So we just need humor. We need goofiness. We need to give ourselves permission to be flawed and to just show up and remind ourselves, well, I'm just a flawed human out here doing my best, wanting to connect. Some people are going to pick up on that. Great. Some people, it's not going to go so well. Also great. It's all okay.
I love that. And I love the idea of just hosting with the only intention to connect. Doesn't have to be perfect. I have a group of friends, but it started early on. Every Thursday, one of them would go, she just moved here. She's like, her and a friend, we're gonna have Thursday dinners, and we're gonna invite certain people, and whoever comes, comes. And every Thursday, more and more people started showing up. But before every dinner, we'd be sitting on the floor, and there'd always be a prompt, and it would invite people to tell these self-deprecating, goofy stories, including myself. And people were cracking up, right? And they're like, who's this guy? He's such a goofy weirdo. But like, for me, it was also disarming for me, because I'm like, oh, there you have it. You know, like there's me in a nutshell. And then it's interesting, after the stories were done and before like the food was coming out or served, people started talking more to other people. They were like, oh my God, I've been there, I've done that before, you know? You start seeing the unfolding of connections without the, like you said, awkward feeling, like when you get there and everyone has their hands in their pockets, they're like, oh, where are you from? What part of LA are you from? But after the story, it's like real, like you feel the blanket of authenticity just, you know, cover everyone. Yeah. And it's beautiful. So I love that you said no other intention other than connection. Maybe start a prompt. Maybe do a prompt for everyone.
I love that. I really loved Esther Perel's game. I think it's called Where Should We Begin? And it has these prompts, these questions. And I use it very casually all the time as just a conversation starter. But yeah, when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we give other people permission to do the same. It changes the whole trajectory of how we connect with each other.
Yeah. And I notice when people are given the space to speak their mind without, you know, judgment, or even like show off a talent, like sing, rap, draw something, like anything, then people are like, wow, I can appreciate that. Yeah. I want to show more of myself. It's like this crazy that like permission or open up space, and people just keep unfolding. And all of a sudden, like a few weeks into it, I was like, I see you every week here. You're a pretty amazing person, man. Well, like we should be like kind of good friends, no? And they're like, yeah, you want to be friends? And we're like, well, let's be friends. And it's
friends, are we friends?
And we're still friends. And they've been out on the podcast here, and like we hang out, like all because there was authentic connection. So.
And you just said something really profound, which is like we are at this moment. We've had Brené Brown teach us all about vulnerability and shame, and so we're starting to tiptoe into the space of sharing our vulnerabilities, what we have some shame around, what we feel like is not our best foot forward. It's not the usual performance of us as like no flaws. Yeah. But you also said like share a talent. And could that perhaps be the next frontier, which is actually also owning our divinity? Mm-hmm. And we're already pretty good at being like, I'm bad, I have all these flaws, like sharing it with others felt super vulnerable, but it was actually only so vulnerable. Yeah. And the real vulnerability is I am capable of accessing self-love. Mm-hmm. I recognize my own divinity. I recognize that I have gifts to offer. And we still culturally are kind of like, whoa, that's arrogant. That, we still don't fully celebrate that, I think, especially for women. And so giving ourselves permission to also just step into our divinity, I think, is a beautiful next frontier.
Oh, 100%. How do we not even have the need to want to show that, right? Like as soon as we feel that, there's like, it's sort of like our purpose to show it to everyone, right? Yeah. Like, please share that. I want to see, like, you know what it even is? Like, there's some people, like, they'll be like, I love singing. I'm like, sing. They're not the best singer, but it's literally the flow of them being in that present state of showing soul through that part of them, where I'm like, fuck, I was completely lost for the past 60 seconds about how into it that I became so into it. Yeah. Or even if there is someone really talented, sure, share that too. But we need to start becoming more authentic in our gifts and really seeing what our gifts are, right? Because a lot of us are like, I don't know, I've just been told I've been good at this. Just share it with everyone, And that's so powerful at the mental health aspect because, man, you feel good in your body after that.
Yeah. And what you're alluding to is also, like we just discussed, we have a fundamental human need to connect. We also have a fundamental human need to create. And when I look at mental health, I look holistically, and I'm certainly focused on the functional medicine piece, the physical aspects of mental health, recognizing it's not just all the neck up, it's not just our brain chemistry, it's not a genetically determined fixed trait, like just a chemical imbalance. If anything, that chemical imbalance is a downstream effect of states of imbalance happening elsewhere in the body. Mm-hmm. So I focus on inflammation and gut health and blood sugar and micronutrient deficiencies and sleep and all of that. But I've also recognized our health, our mental health, it's equal parts has a material physical reality and it has a psychospiritual basis. And we cannot ignore that. And that's where we get into our fundamental need for connection, our fundamental need to create, to be artists. As humans, I don't think we can avoid that. And I forget where I heard this concept. I think it's a Brene Brown term, but art scar. Like at some point in our childhood, we just naturally were like, I made something. And somebody was like, well, that's not good enough for X and Y and Z reason. And we're like, I will never offer this to the world again. Yeah. So we walk around with these art scars and we're bottled up in our creativity, which impacts our sensuality and our sexuality. It impacts like the flow of energy in our being. And so a lot of us need to do some healing and rehabilitation around creation, making art. Doesn't matter whether or not it's good. It's the act of creation and letting that source energy flow is really the purpose of it. So it goes along with sharing your talent and singing, whether or not we're a good singer. Who cares?
Who cares? It's creation. You know, something that always struck me, and I read it somewhere, is that the biblical reference of you're made in the eyes of God is referring to you are a creator. Our very essence is to create. Whether we know it or not, we are always doing it with thoughts, words, and actions.
Yeah.
Now, the question is, can you consciously create with your gifts, which is even more powerful? Because people are touched every time you know that you have this gift and you're creating with it. So for me, it's like, I always challenge people. I was like, well, create. What is it that you want to create? Forget your job. What is a hobby? What is something that is deep within you? What did you do when you were a kid? Before that, like you said beautifully, the art scar. You know, for me, I remember singing. I sound like two drunken alley cats in the alley. I know I can't, but I remember being told like not to sing at some point in my life, right? Maybe dance. I know I can dance, but also I know that like I was probably stifled at some point with doing that. So I felt uncomfortable for a lot of my life. And it's all of these things. I'm like, holy shit, like this has affected, like you said, sensuality, sexuality, expression, because it's just like, no, you're not safe to create. You're not safe to be. You're not safe to, I'm not that good of a drawer, but I used to draw when I was a kid all the time. Do you know what brings me peace? When I do all of those things. When I'm able to dance in the shower or sing like an Usher concert in the shower, you know what I mean? Or whatever it is, or just draw if I need to. That's, for me, like such a root for mental health, like you said, above the neck. That is what I notice. It's like, yeah, let's get the micronutrients, let's get the gut health, the inflammation, the blood sugar. But what about the really deep stuff about you?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And I love that we're having that part of the conversation because it's so powerful. But shifting gears, you mentioned a few more things, and I want to touch on those things.
Yeah.
You mentioned micronutrient deficiencies. How often are you seeing magnesium as one of the big ones?
I mean, that's everybody.
Everybody.
If you really check it properly, like looking at RBC or red blood cell magnesium levels, we're all deficient in it, which makes sense because our food is deficient, because our soil is deficient. So none of us is getting enough magnesium. And that's a really nice no-brainer to feel better because it's, as you mentioned earlier, it's not an expensive supplement. It's not rocket science to make good magnesium glycinate. And then you can kind of gauge for yourself the right amount. I usually tell people to start with one capsule, like 120 milligrams. And some people need to ramp up a bit. Some people, that's the right amount. You usually know if you're taking too much because you get loose stool. And it's helpful for anxiety, but also insomnia, migraines, menstrual cramps, muscle tension in general, longevity, cardiovascular health, digestion. You just have to do a thing, which is take this pill at night. Bedtime is a good time to take it because it kind of can drop you in and help you fall asleep. And so I see so much magnesium deficiency. Vitamin B12 is a big one that comes up. That one can have very, very real mental health implications. And a lot of people are vitamin B12 deficient. And interestingly, it happens with a lot of health conscious folks.
So we know the last 2 years have been crazy. We've never experienced anything like this in our lifetimes. We've never experienced such an effect to our mental health and well-being. Now, unfortunately, a lot of us has been beaten down by anxiety, stress, poor sleep, due to all the uncertainty that's happening in the world. Now, if you're a working parent, you have extra difficulty in keeping your kids occupied 24/7 while trying to work from home. It's not an easy task. So if you're exhausted or burnt out, you're not alone. So many of us are. Now, the question is, what can we do to enhance our mental wellness and recapture that zest for life that had us feeling good a few years ago? One critical thing I'm always advising to all family and friends is to do the magnesium breakthrough by biooptimizers, and here's why. Stress and anxiety deplete your magnesium levels immediately. Low magnesium levels can contribute to more anxiety. You see this vicious cycle. When you supplement magnesium breakthrough, you break that cycle because you'll be able to get 7 unique forms of organic, full-spectrum magnesium for stress relief and better sleep all in one bottle. So taking magnesium breakthrough will help you experience more energy, stronger bones, healthy blood pressure, less irritability. I know a lot of us are irritable out there. Calmer mood, reduced muscle cramping, and even fewer migraines. And it's because it supports your overall health, including your mental health. Magnesium breakthrough can help you finally feel like yourself again. And magnesium is one of the go-to top 3 supplements I recommend for everyone because we're so depleted. Simply taking 2 capsules before bed, you'll start feeling more improvements, especially in your mood, your energy, and even in your bowel movements. So for an exclusive offer for my Heal Thyself listeners, go to www.magbreakthrough.com/DRG and use the code DRG10 during checkout. You're gonna get 10% off and get free shipping. Thank you, Biooptimizers. Element is a tasty electrolyte drink with everything you need and nothing that you don't. This means lots of salt with no sugar. It contains a science-backed electrolyte mix. What does it have? 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 milligrams of potassium, 60 milligrams of magnesium. And it contains none of the junk. No sugar, no food coloring, no artificial ingredients, no gluten, no fillers, no BS. Element is formulated to help anyone with their electrolyte needs and is perfectly suited for lifestyles for keto, low carb, paleo, vegan, whatever it is. It's super important to replenish your electrolytes. And a lot of us are really active. And I'm talking about detoxing and sweating all the time. This is my go-to after the sauna. I bring it in the sauna with me. I always have my water with Element because the electrolyte ratio is such that it's keeping me hydrated all the time. Now, electrolytes facilitate hundreds of functions in the body, including the conduction of nerve impulses, hormonal regulation, nutrient absorption, and fluid balance. Now, Element can help prevent and eliminate headaches, muscle cramps, fatigue, sleeplessness, and other common symptoms due to electrolyte deficiency. Now, when you sweat, the primary electrolyte that's lost is sodium. When you were a kid, you ever lick your sweat? I used to, and it tasted like salt. That's why. Athletes can lose up to 7 grams per day. When sodium is not replaced, it's common to experience muscle cramps and fatigue. Now, Element is super popular in sports. NBA, NFL, NHL players, Olympic athletes, Navy SEALs, to everyday moms are using this for their exercise needs. Everyone needs to replenish their electrolytes. We know that. Water is just not enough. And as I mentioned, Element is the #1 thing that I'm using when I'm sweating, when I'm working out. And it helps limit dehydration for me, which leads to exhaustion. So right now, Element is offering Heal Thyself listeners a free sample pack with any purchase. That's 8 single-serving packets free with any Element order. Now, this is a great way to try all the 8 flavors to figure out which one you really like. So you can get yours at drinkelement.com/DRG. This deal is only available through my link. You must go to drinkLMNT.com/DRG. Element offers no questions asked refunds.
I really honor all the different reasons that we make different choices with diet. I was for the longest time vegetarian and then eventually vegan and for a hot minute raw vegan. And, I went on that whole journey of like, how do I heal my body? And I thought I was making the healthy choice. And I do think there are thriving vegans in the world. Like I've seen them, they're my patients, they're my friends. My personal constitution wasn't set up to be a thriving vegan, at least not in a place like New York City with winter. And so what I needed to do was reincorporate red meat and bone broth and chicken liver pate into my diet. And then that's what allowed me to feel well again. And it turns out I was vitamin B12 deficient, and then I really healed that. It's not impossible to do that with supplements, but you just want to be conscious.
Right, a lot of people are I remember when I was doing a lot of nutrient testing, I would see B12, magnesium all the time, vitamin D, just so many people. But I was always shocked how low B12 was. And it was in vegans and even non-vegans. And I'm like, what's going on here, right? What I always say, and I've been eating plant-based for 11 years now, is you really have to know what you're doing. You can't just jump in and go, I'm gonna get this frozen patty. I'm going to eat this processed, fake meat. You know what I mean? And like eating all these carbs. I mean, for the first year, I was a mess. Like my red blood cells were a mess, my white blood cells were a mess. I was tired all the time. I gained weight, and I was like, what the heck? I'm a skinny guy. I'm not supposed to. And it took many years for me to get it dialed in, saying, I need to eat enough, first of all. I need to eat enough protein, first of all, because that was really affecting my mental health. And then make sure that I'm getting all that really good variety. I wasn't even eating enough. That's a big change. So yeah, I mean, I noticed that too. It's a big part of the mental health stuff. It's just something simple. Imagine a micronutrient deficiency can really change your mental health.
I mean, that's what's so profound about this more holistic understanding of mental health is that we get slapped with these labels and they start to become part of our identity. We think, I am someone with anxiety. Like, that will always be true. And what's actually true is that, maybe you have a genetic predisposition, but as we say in functional medicine, genetics loads the gun, but environment pulls the trigger.
Yeah.
And just focusing on genetics is not a very hopeful or empowering strategy. When we look at environment, that's the part we can control. And actually a lot of what we consider heavy-duty mental health issues have a physical basis or have a psychospiritual basis. And we can change that. And so if you're walking around vitamin B12 deficient, you might be anxious your whole life. Your blood sugar might be on a roller coaster. You're having frequent panic attacks. You might be a slow metabolizer of caffeine. You're having like a tall cold brew every day. And you think of yourself as someone with heavy-duty mental health issues, when in fact, this is something that we can identify the root cause of, address, and you can walk away from that suffering. And it really just requires a little investigative work and some lifestyle changes, and to do that with a light grip. Because as we talked about earlier, you can get really into this and it becomes a part-time job. And then you're choking down supplements and you're obsessively meal prepping. And so you kind of have to nudge your body into balance, but always from a place of ease, and it has to be reasonable.
Yeah, I love that we're talking about the stress component to being healthy, right? And making sure you ease your way into that health and have space, the 80-20 rule, right? At least, most of the week you're gonna be dialed in and go, okay, I've meal prepped, I batched, I know all the stuff that I'm gonna eat, I have a meal delivery service. And then, allow space for yourself, which is so important. What about the gut? You mentioned gut health and the inflammation. How big of a role with your patients are you seeing people go, my mental health is a mess. Oh yeah, by the way, doc, my gut health has been a mess too at the same time.
Yeah, so it's most people. And here's the part that I think we're not understanding yet as a culture. So we've started to appreciate the connection between the gut and the brain. And people are talking about that. That's a term in the zeitgeist now. But we assume it's all top-down communication. We assume that if we're anxious or we're stressed, it impacts our digestion. So we think, I have IBS because I have stress. And that's valid, but it's two-way communication. And in many ways, the easier entry point is to also recognize that something's off in the gut, which is so many of us because modern life makes a broad assault on the health of our digestive tract. Our foods are inflammatory. Everything about our lifestyle, from antibiotics to chlorinated tap water to, what we eat, is disrupting the diverse ecosystem of beneficial bacteria and parasites and fungi. Like, it's a whole mixed bag down there. We're not exposed to microbes through dirt or animal feces, sort of these older ways that we were just getting an influx of microbes, and consistent consumption of fermented foods that was part of traditional diets. So we've compromised the ecosystem of bugs. We have an inflamed gut lining. A lot of us have some degree of intestinal permeability or leaky gut, which is provocative to our immune system through our whole body, which impacts the brain. But importantly, when the whole gut is out of balance, that's also sending information back up to the brain. It's bottom-up communication. And it's basically saying, things are not okay down here. Feel uneasy so that you'll rest, so the gut can heal, so that you'll make slightly different choices. And that's the entry point that's more easily addressed than 7 years of psychotherapy to address the top-down communication. And for many of us, we need some dedicated gut healing time. We need to heal the gut lining. We need to cultivate a diverse ecosystem of beneficial bacteria. We need to stop throwing things into our system that continuously irritate our gut.
What are the top ways to do that then?
I learned this first from Chris Kresser. And he's an author. He wrote The Paleo Cure and Unconventional Medicine. And he describes it as first you remove what irritates the gut. So get off the inflammatory foods if you can and identify which ones matter for you. For many of us, it's conventional American gluten, dairy for some people, not for everybody, industrial seed oils, avoid it when possible. And then there's certain medications, things like antacids, unnecessary antibiotics, for some people birth control pill, for some people psych meds, stimulants. And so all of that can play a role. And then you add in what soothes the gut. So it could be glutamine, could be ghee, could be bone broth, could be collagen, and then create the conditions for the gut to heal. That starts with having a Squatty Potty. If anybody's listening right now and doesn't already have a Squatty Potty, run, don't walk. That's essential. But then most of all, it's rest. Our whole body, the mechanisms of repair happen when we're in a state of rest and relaxation.
Yeah.
And that's in short supply in modern life. We need to say no. We need to put the phone down. We need to actually give our body the signal of, this is a good time to do some housekeeping and repair what's broken.
And our body many times gives us that signal to go, hey, take it easy. And then we go, no, I need to go to this event.
Yeah.
And it's like, please take it easy.
Yeah.
And then you just suppress it, and then it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse.
We even give ourselves negative self-talk in that moment. Like, why am I so tired, unproductive, lazy? We assume the body is wrong and that we're somehow not good, when the body is like, no. Like, we live in modern life. The gut is very unwell. We need to rest.
Yeah.
I'm here to help, is what the body is trying to convey.
Such a powerful signal. We have to listen to our gut.
Yeah.
Aside from intuition, listen to the gut, what it's trying to tell us. Why the Squatty Potty? You just mentioned that.
Oh, yeah. So the Squatty Potty, it's this little stool. You can put the base of your toilet and you put your feet on it when you're having a bowel movement. And it approximates the squatting position. But for us in modern, not native bodies that struggle to actually squat, not that we have a hole in the ground to use for squatting anyway. So you can still have a toilet, but you're approximating the squatting position, which is really important for the alignment of the sigmoid colon into the rectum, but also opening up sphincters. Because when we're just sitting on a throne to have a bowel movement, we basically are pinching things off. And there's a crimp in the colon, and there's also these partially closed sphincters that we're pushing against. And it means we have incomplete evacuation, and then there's sort of a little bit of backing up, and then we have that alternating IBS between loose stool and constipation, and can even lead to things like SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, heartburn, hemorrhoids. And this is all because we're just not having complete evacuation because we're not squatting.
Just squatting. And I have one. I have what my friend has a company, and I was like, this is amazing. Why haven't I had this since the 90s?
Yeah.
What's happening here, you know? And it's so simple and cheap, It's crazy.
It's my favorite kind of intervention, something that's inexpensive, non-invasive, and it frickin' works for a reason that has a biologic plausibility. It makes sense.
I'm imagining people right now listening with their glasses on the computer,
Exactly.
just minimizing our convo really quick and just looking for...
The orange glasses are another one, just like the Squatty Potty.
Exactly.
Inexpensive, non-invasive, biologic plausibility, they work.
And you mentioned, and you knew where I was going, you mentioned the phone.
Yeah.
Okay, so the orange glasses are, for me, a non-negotiable.
Non-negotiable.
I have all my family on it, without fail. If I make a new friend, I was like, I'm telling you right now, just listen to me. If I only say one thing. But how important is our protection from this light?
So, the reason it matters is, it's many reasons, but what happens, we evolved, the proverbial savanna of evolution, where if it was daytime, it was by definition light out. If it was nighttime, it was by definition dark out. We might sit by the fire for a couple hours, and then we could see the moon, the stars, bioluminescence if you happen to be in Puerto Rico, and otherwise, you're not seeing any light after sunset. And that is the design of our body, our whole circadian rhythm, or sleep-wake cycle. It's cued by a part of the brain called the suprachiasmatic nuclei, and it's scanning the landscape all the time to see how much light there is, and watching the habits, the patterns of light. And it uses that for our bodies to know what time of day it is. And that was a foolproof system on the savanna of evolution. And now it's really vulnerable to being completely jacked up by modern life. So indoors during the day, but most importantly after sunset, surrounded by a psychedelic light show of laptops and TVs and overhead lighting and screens. So we're getting all this blue spectrum light. It simulates sunshine, and it's telling our suprachiasmatic nuclei, good morning, it's 8 a.m., even if we're just in bed doom scrolling at 11:45 p.m.
Yeah.
And so what it does is it suppresses our melatonin, so we never get appropriately tired, and we miss melatonin, this endangered species of modern life. It's how we sleep deeply, it's how we repair, it's what revs up our immune response, it's helpful for mental health. It's really critical that we get that darkness at night. And when we miss it, we don't fall asleep, we don't stay asleep, we're missing immune health, we develop all kinds of issues with our immune response, and it's all because of the light. And the nice thing is, there is a definitive solution, which is like defenestrate your phone into the ocean and then move off the grid and have a chicken coop and have a well.
Yeah.
And like, that's a great life. I envy that. But I think that short of homesteading, you can also just get blue blocking glasses.
For sure. And they work.
They work.
So are they all created equal, or they're just...
They're not. Yeah.
So you just have to find a good quality one.
Find a good quality one.
Yeah.
And then you can kind of product test it for yourself. Like, I've gotten an array of them, and at home, I know which ones actually help me fall asleep well, and which ones I'm like staring at the phone close to bed, and I'm like, I don't know
if
think
this
these are
does
working.
anything.
Yeah.
So I know that I'll use different ones, but I have ones at my house. Put it this way: anytime I put on those blue blockers, I'm tired by 9:20, 9:30,
exactly.
And if I don't, I naturally or unnaturally go to sleep at like 11:30, 12. And it's crazy. Like,
it's
I've never
wild.
been the one to like, because I always try to like, wind down, watch a little cool Netflix show or something really, and then turn that off, then do some like breathing, and then take a shower, go to sleep. And I'll fall asleep during the show with my blockers on.
Yeah.
And I was like, I can't, this is not sustainable anymore. I can't even watch shows anymore because I'm just getting so tired so early now.
And I thought of myself always as a night owl. And I realize now what I really am is someone sensitive to light.
Yes.
And so
Same.
morning birds are sort of, in certain ways, less disrupted by the light exposure of modern light. And those of us that are night owls, in many ways, we're just more susceptible. I think about this with my bipolar patients. Bipolar, maybe that's my next book, but basically, there's a lot of holistic ways to think about what makes people with bipolar more likely to be symptomatic. And I think a lot of people with bipolar are very light sensitive. So what happens is, they're at the casino, they're up late with people looking at screens, watching TV, whatever it is, and their brain is just off to the races. They don't get that signal to get sleepy. And then it creates being awake all night, which induces a state of mania, which, eventually induces a state of depression and creates that cyclical habit. And so, it turns out
Just be light sensitivity.
there were just many of them. I mean, that's not the only thing going on with bipolar, but it's a factor.
Wow, a major thing.
Yeah.
Where are you worried about the usage of cell phones when it comes to creating anxiety as a society? Is it going up, and do you think cell phones are a big reason why? So
it's going up. Cell phones are a big reason why. I think, to me, like, we can even just put that aside or just accept it, establish it. It's fact. Yeah. More the question is, like, what do we do with that knowledge, and how do we realistically live our lives given our awareness that this is a thing that's destructive to our mental health and destructive to the fabric of society? What do we do? I think it's a real struggle. I mean, my line is, at least don't bring the phone into the bedroom at night. It's one small change that's realistic. And so you've at least protected the little bit of time before bed. You're not doom scrolling. You're not disrupting your circadian rhythm as much. But what do you do the rest of the time? And I heard it once described as, like, there was a moment when cars had been invented, but seatbelts had not yet been invented. Mm-hmm. I think that's kind of where we're at with cell phones, right? Like, this is powerful machinery. It can enable our lives, and it also has dangers. And we're all riding around just like swinging back and forth in the back seat. Like, we don't have seatbelts on. And so I think the onus right now is on us as individuals to figure out what's our etiquette, where do we put in protections. For me, my non-negotiable protection is the phone doesn't come into the bedroom at night. And then there's a lot of more wiggly protection throughout the day of, it's a mindfulness practice. It's catching myself when I went down a rabbit hole. Yeah. And as soon as I catch that, to put it away. And it's a lot like the Pringles, bet you can't eat just one. Like once you've had that crunch in your mouth, you just want to keep ingesting them. Your mouth then wants it. And the same thing happens for us with social media, with everything that doesn't have a natural stopping point on the phone. It's like, you know, you don't get the feeling of like, I just got to the end of TikTok. It's just more and more and more dopamine. There is no end. And it requires an immense amount of proactive intervention to be like, put it away. And I think we just need to recognize that's what's asked of us right now if we want to protect our sanity and our ability to be available for the present moment.
I agree. I'll lay down on the couch with my partner. I'll be like, let's look at TikTok. Let's look at funny videos of monkeys and dogs and fish that like act like humans. And then we'll just keep doing it. And then like really like 30 minutes later, I'll be like, should we get up and go? Should we go? And I'll say, should we go for another 10 minutes?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because there's so much dopamine utility in seeing this funny stuff. Because we're just waiting for a really funny video. And inevitably, they just show up. Yeah. And it is crazy how hard it is for me to just be like, all right, we're done. Let's go. Let's go get ready.
Yeah.
And to think that like whatever mechanism, I mean, it's purposeful for me. It's like whatever mechanism behind that phone, the intelligence of it, or the creation of the intelligence of it, how it affects our brain is crazy. Yeah. It is crazy. So oftentimes what I'll do is I'll have the yellow blockers during the day if I know that I'm going to be on the computer for a long time or on the phone for a long time. And then I'll sometimes put the red light, like the triple click. Do you have that? The triple click and it shows the red tint on the phone?
Oh.
I'm going to show you this.
This sounds like a hack.
I'm going to show you off there. Yeah, I did a whole TikTok on it and it showed how to do. I felt like an old man when I said Tic Tac. it shows how to do it. I know.
Are they not still around?
Yeah, I know. It's delicious candy. It is. But the red light, the red tint. So it like I'm less attracted to the colors, and it's kind of a boring phone when I have that on there. Yeah. But it stops me from scrolling. So I don't know. It works for me, but I know this. I've never really suffered with anxiety. Mm-hmm. And my space and resiliency has become smaller and smaller and smaller the more time or more work that I had to do on the phone. Yeah. So it went from like 4 hours to 5 hours to 6 hours. And I saw that when I was like doing 8 hours a day, my anxiety was like crazy. I was just overwhelmed about everything. Yeah. One new task in the day and I'm like, I can't do it. I'm done for the day. Yeah. And I know that this helps. The blockers, the practices have made a major, major difference.
Well, it's interesting, like kids are a really useful weather vane in many ways because like when a grown-up has a blood sugar crash, we just feel like a little on edge and doomy and anxious, but we're like, we don't know to identify with blood sugar. When a kid is hungry, like at least with my daughter, it's like World War III, it's a meltdown. Right. And similarly with screens, like my husband and I will sit there, look at screens and be like a little more irritable with each other. If she's looking at YouTube afterwards, she's completely dysregulated. It's like, I don't want to go to school. I don't want to wear shoes. I don't want anything. Like you can see right before your eyes how her nervous system just got jacked up from it. So like she's actually, she's less compensated. Adults are so compensated. You know, we're sort of like pushing everything down and it's just right in front of you with children. You're like, okay, so this shit is toxic. And yeah, I mean, I think that going back just to bedtime very quickly, an interesting piece of trivia is that when anthropologists look at humans, especially in pre-industrial societies, like hunter-gatherers who still exist on the earth today, they have a pretty consistent bedtime around 3 hours after sunset. And so, which makes sense. It's especially for us to not be just unsafely walking around where we might get eaten by a leopard or fall off a cliff. It's like you hang out by the fire, eat some food, socialize, and then you go to bed. And it varies a little bit, time of year, where you are on the globe. But that 9:20, you start to feel sleepy when you're wearing blue blockers. When our circadian rhythm is not falsely affected by blue light, our body gets a sweet spot of being perfectly tired around 3 hours after sunset. Wow. And if we catch that wave, we actually fall asleep easily. We don't get that tired and wired second wind. Yeah. We fall asleep without drama. We stay asleep through the night.
Interesting. That is really interesting because that's exactly what I've noticed. Right around 3 hours, when I properly put it on, like the sun will go down, I'll come back to my house and like the lights will be on, I'll just squint and then put them on and then I'll turn down everything. Those days, nights, I'm out by like 9:30. Yeah. really, really interesting. So I would actually urge all the viewers and listeners, get some blue blockers, see when you're starting to get tired, and then listen to your body. Because for me, I have a window, 20 minutes. If I don't fall asleep, man, I'm good till like 12 o'clock. I'm ready to do some more stuff. I was like, I wonder like how old the universe is. And then I'll just go down a rabbit hole for like 2 hours, Do you know like that type of stuff?
Yep.
So, but I would challenge everyone to do that. So super, super cool. Can you tell us a little bit about this book now?
Yeah. So central thesis of the book, it's called The Anatomy of Anxiety. And it's basically understanding that we've been thinking about mental health wrong, like neck up, genetically determined chemical imbalance. There's validity to that, but it's not helping us enough. And there's many people that are helped by that model, but so many people whose mental health is not adequately managed through that model. So we need to do a little better. And I've started to recognize that the physical body plays an incredibly important role in our mental health. So the whole first half is like me with a Mr. Fix-It hat on with actionable strategies. Here's how you nourish yourself. Here's how you heal your gut. Here's how you realistically sleep well in modern life. Here's how you realistically exercise in modern life. There's a bit of a kind of like a transitional thing around using things like breath work and realistic amounts of meditation. It's like a daily multivitamin that just shifts your nervous system. You have a different threshold then to whether you'll be tipped into a stress response or into anxiety. And a little bit about completing the stress cycle, like how to release the inevitable stress that we take on. And then it shifts. In the second half of the book, that whole first half, it's calling anxiety false anxiety. It's this unnecessary, avoidable anxiety that's based in the physical body. It's not false in the sense that the suffering is any less real. Yeah. Like, it's very real suffering, but there's a straightforward cause and a straightforward path out. And the second half of the book is about true anxiety. And this is not something we should be pathologizing. It's not something we can gluten-free or decaf coffee our way out of. It's our inner compass. It's purposeful anxiety. It's here to tap on our shoulder and be like, slow down, pay attention. It's like, hold up. You know you're not in alignment in this way in your life.
Yeah.
You know that and whether it is you need to get out of this job, get out of this relationship, call your grandma, you need to make art, you need to help this cause that's important to you. Whatever it is, it can be grand, it can be really local and small. It doesn't matter. It's just an inner truth that we need to heed. It's a call to action.
Yeah.
And once we do, we don't feel so helplessly mired in our anxiety. It transmutes the feeling into purposeful action.
That is like a true holistic doctor, holistic book. That's how we do it, right? We really, really help people on the physical, and then we show them what it is on the true mental, emotional, even spiritual side.
Yeah.
That is how we treat anxiety, and I love that you're doing it like that. For the viewers and listeners, where do you practice? And how do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of practice on the internets at this point, but I live in New York City.
Cool.
And I'm pretty active on Instagram. I'm at Ellen Vora, MD, and my website is ellenvora.com. But my book, The Anatomy of Anxiety, is my life's work in 250 pages. So
amazing.
That's a great way to take this holistic approach to mental health. It's focused on anxiety, but it's supportive of depression, bipolar, insomnia, ADHD even. It really can help in a lot of ways.
I'm excited. I want my copy. I'm going to read it. I'm going to read 250 pages in 250 minutes. I'm ready to go.
Wow.
I'm going all in like a speed reader.
Right.
Thank you for all the work you do. And thank you for simplifying so much for a lot of us. I know this conversation was really helpful. It brought a lot of fire into me, especially the parts going about community and all these things about creativity and art. And like, I'm fired up. Like, I'm ready to go paint something tonight. So thank you. And of course, when you're back in LA, come right back and we'll do part 2 of this talk.
Sounds good. Dr. G, thanks for having me on.